The battlefield was quiet now, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence that followed after great destruction. Smoke curled in the air, rising from the broken walls of the Scifi stronghold. Pieces of metal and stone were scattered across the floor, and the faint smell of burning machines filled the place. Ryan, a young human soldier, walked slowly through the ruined passage. His boots crunched against broken shards, each step sounding too loud in the emptiness. His rifle rested in his hands, ready, because silence was not always safety. Sometimes, silence meant a hidden danger waiting to strike. His eyes scanned the shadows, searching every corner, every broken door. He had been trained for years to fight against the Scifi. To humans, they were a terrifying enemy, with their tall bodies, strange weapons, and a will to fight until death. Ryan had seen their attacks on villages, and he had seen his friends fall in battles. Yet, as he moved deeper inside the stronghold, he felt something different. The Scifi were not fighting back here. No voices, no footsteps, only the sound of crumbling walls. His heart pounded as he pushed open a heavy metal gate. Beyond it stretched the central hall, a vast chamber where the queen was said to rule. Human reports spoke of her as the mind behind the war, the one who commanded the Scifi to fight without mercy. Soldiers whispered about her with fear and hatred. Some called her a monster. The hall was dim, light slipping in only through cracks in the ceiling. Dust floated in the beams, shining faintly like tiny stars. Ryan walked slowly, his rifle raised. He expected hidden Scifi warriors to rush at him, but none came. Instead, he noticed the signs of a great battle: fallen banners, shattered weapons, marks of explosions. He stepped further, and the sound of his breathing grew louder in his helmet. He thought of his squad outside. They were clearing the upper levels, while he had been ordered to scout the central chamber. He did not know if he was ready to see the queen, but his duty was to go forward. At the far end of the chamber, he stopped. Something caught his eye. A figure lay against the cracked throne of the Scifi. His chest tightened. Even from a distance, he could feel a strange presence in the air. He took careful steps closer. The figure was tall, taller than any human. The long crest upon her head marked her clearly. This was no ordinary Scifi. This was their queen. Ryan's grip on his rifle tightened. His breath came in short bursts. He remembered the faces of commanders who had told him again and again, if the queen falls, the Scifi will break. Without her, their will to fight will vanish. But what he saw in front of him was not the image of a mighty ruler. The queen was wounded. Her arms rested heavy at her sides. Her body leaned against the broken stone, and her movements were slow, almost lifeless. She tried to shift, but she could not rise. Ryan froze. His weapon was pointed at her chest, but his finger did not pull the trigger. He had been ready to fight, ready to face something terrifying. Instead, he saw weakness. The queen was alive, yet she was no longer strong enough to stand. The silence deepened around them. For a moment, it felt as if the war outside did not exist. It was only him and her, two enemies staring across a short distance. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with anger but with something that surprised him: tiredness, and maybe even sorrow. Ryan's heart raced. This was the moment soldiers dreamed of. To end the war, to strike down the enemy leader. Yet he hesitated. He remembered the villages he had passed, filled with people who wanted nothing but peace. He remembered how he had once promised himself that if there was ever a choice, he would not add more pain to the world. The queen blinked slowly. Her chest rose and fell with effort. No words came from her lips, yet Ryan felt as if her gaze was speaking to him. She was not begging. She was not pleading for her life. She was only there, unable to move, meeting his eyes without fear. Ryan lowered his weapon slightly. His mind fought against his training, but his heart pushed him in another direction. For the first time, he wondered if killing her would really end the war or if it would only begin another. He stood there, torn between duty and something deeper inside him. The silence of the battlefield pressed down on him. The decision he made here would not only shape his own life, but perhaps the lives of many. And so, in the middle of the ruined stronghold, a young human soldier faced the greatest enemy of his people. Yet, in that moment, he did not see her as a monster. He saw her as a living being, fallen and unable to rise. The silence stretched on, and Ryan knew the hardest choice of his life was just beginning. Ryan's eyes remained fixed on the alien queen. She lay on the ground, her silver crest tilted slightly to one side, dust and small pieces of debris clinging to her skin. Despite her size, her movements were slow and weak. Every shift of her body seemed to take effort. He had always imagined her as a towering, unstoppable figure, commanding her forces with fear and power. Yet here she was, vulnerable and almost fragile. The chamber around her spoke of chaos. Broken banners hung limply from cracked walls. Pieces of strange alien technology were scattered across the floor. The air smelled of burned circuits and smoke, remnants of the fight that had taken place here. Ryan moved closer, his boots making soft, careful sounds. Every step made him feel heavier inside, as if the weight of history pressed on him. He had trained for moments like this, yet he felt strangely unprepared. The stories told by human officers painted the queen as ruthless, merciless, and cruel. Soldiers had whispered that she could destroy entire battalions without hesitation. He had expected her to be strong, defiant, even angry at him for entering her chamber. But the queen was not angry. She did not move with fury or shout in challenge. She simply looked at him with wide, cautious eyes. There was intelligence there, of course, but also a strange stillness. She was assessing him, just as he had been assessing her. Ryan raised his rifle slightly, feeling the tension in his muscles. His training told him to act now, to take the decisive step, to eliminate the enemy leader and end the war for humanity. Yet something stopped him. He saw the faint lines of pain on her face. He saw the struggle to even lift herself from the floor. This was not the face of a monster, but of a being who had endured much. As he watched, a soft vibration ran through the air, almost like a voice but not quite. He realized it was coming from the queen. It was not words spoken aloud. Instead, it resonated in his mind, a strange and clear thought that carried both pride and weariness. She was telling him she could not rise. She was injured, exhausted, and alone. Ryan lowered his rifle slightly, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His heart beat fast, and his mind raced. He could feel the tension between duty and something else, compassion, perhaps, or understanding. He thought of the villages he had passed during the war, the people who had suffered because of fear and hatred. Was ending this life truly the answer? Or could there be another way? The queen shifted slightly, and he could see the effort it took. Her limbs were long, and yet they trembled as if even the simplest movement demanded great energy. The armor she wore was cracked, dented from the battles she had fought. She had survived countless attacks, yet now she could not even stand on her own. Ryan knelt slightly, trying to get a better view. He noticed the details that no report could have ever conveyed. The way her eyes reflected the dim light, showing intelligence and awareness. The subtle curve of her limbs, designed for power and speed, now weighed down by injury. She was more than a leader or a weapon. She was a living being, capable of thought, feeling, and perhaps even fear. For a long moment, neither moved. The silence of the chamber was thick, almost like it was holding its breath. Ryan realized he had a choice. He could follow his orders and end the Queen's life, securing a clear victory for humanity. Or he could act differently, taking a risk that no one else would understand. The Queen's eyes met his, and something passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the situation. She was not begging. She was not threatening. She was only there, unable to rise, waiting to see what he would do. Ryan could feel her strength of will, even in weakness. It was clear that she had commanded armies and survived countless battles. She was the same queen that had inspired fear across the stars, yet now she depended entirely on him. Ryan lowered his rifle fully and took a step closer. His training screamed at him to act, to eliminate the enemy before they could recover. Yet his heart told him to pause. He remembered the faces of those who had suffered because of war. He remembered the moments when he had chosen mercy over violence, small acts that had saved lives. Now, standing before the Queen, he realized that this moment could be more than just another battle. It could be a choice that defined who he was, not only as a soldier but as a human being. He did not yet know what he would do, but he understood the importance of the decision. The Queen looked at him steadily. Her breathing was slow but deliberate. The faint shimmer of her skin reflected the light from the cracks in the ceiling. For the first time, Ryan felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The war could continue endlessly, fueled by fear and hatred. Or it could change in an instant, depending on what he chose next. He took a deep breath and made his decision. He lowered his rifle completely, letting it hang at his side. He would not strike. Instead, he would act in a way no one expected. The Queen, lying on the ground, looked at him with a flicker of surprise. Perhaps she understood that a human soldier had chosen mercy over destruction. In that moment, the battlefield outside seemed to fade. The war, the destruction, and the fear were all there, but in the ruined chamber, something else existed, a moment of possibility, where choices could change the future. Ryan's eyes remained locked on the Queen's as he stepped closer, ready to act in a way that could reshape the fate of two species. Ryan stood a few steps from the alien Queen, his heart beating fast. The chamber seemed even quieter now, as if the walls themselves waited for him to act. Every instinct in his body told him to raise his weapon, to finish what years of war had demanded. Yet another part of him held back, urging him to see her differently, not as the enemy, but as a living being. He looked at her carefully. The Queen's silver crest caught a little of the light from the cracked ceiling, giving her a strange, almost regal glow. Her eyes were wide, steady, and calm, but beneath that calm, he sensed pain and exhaustion. She was alone, wounded, and unable to move. The very figure that had led a fierce army now relied entirely on him for survival. Ryan's training pulled at his mind. Every drill, every mission briefing, every order he had followed pointed toward one action: eliminate the enemy leader. He could end the war here, and human forces would celebrate his success. Yet the image of her lying helplessly weighed on his conscience. The stories about monsters and killers clashed with the reality before him. The Queen was not a machine or a weapon. She was a creature that felt, that could suffer, and that could perhaps even understand compassion. The chamber shook slightly from distant explosions outside, a reminder that the war was still raging. Dust fell from the ceiling, settling on the queen's shoulders and the broken stones around her. Ryan's boots crunched softly on the rubble as he took a careful step closer. He raised his rifle again, briefly, out of instinct. But as he saw the effort in her faint movements, his finger relaxed. A quiet, almost musical vibration reached him from the queen. It was not words spoken aloud, but thoughts shared across the strange connection that sometimes occurred between the Scifi and humans. He could sense her mind reaching toward him, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. She was telling him she could not rise, that she depended on someone's help now. Not orders, not loyalty, but sheer need. Ryan swallowed hard. He remembered the villages he had passed during the war. Families hiding from fear, children trembling at the sounds of distant battles, communities burned because of mistrust and hatred. Was killing this one being going to stop that suffering? Or could he change the course of events by choosing something unexpected? He lowered the rifle slowly and noticed small details he had missed before. The way her arms, though long and powerful, now rested weakly. The faint tremor in her legs, a clear sign of exhaustion. The subtle breathing, heavy yet steady, showing she was alive but fragile. It struck him that she had survived countless battles, led armies across star systems, and yet now she relied entirely on him. For the first time, Ryan understood the meaning of true power. It was not only in strength, weapons, or commands. It was also in choice, in mercy, in understanding the life of another. The Queen's power had inspired fear across galaxies, but the moment she lay helpless, it was Ryan's choice that held the real weight. He took another careful step closer. His mind replayed the orders he had received and the consequences of defying them. Yet every time he imagined firing, he saw her eyes not angry, not pleading, but watching him, waiting for him to act with more than instinct. He knew then that this was more than a soldier's test. This was a test of humanity itself, of whether he would follow fear and habit or create a new path. Ryan knelt slightly, his hands relaxing from the rifle. The Queen's gaze followed him as if reading his thoughts. He could sense curiosity, surprise, and a flicker of hope in her. Perhaps she understood that he was choosing differently. Perhaps she had never encountered a human who hesitated to destroy, who paused to consider mercy instead. The chamber seemed to change around them. The destruction, the smoke, and the distant sounds of battle were still present, but they felt distant now. It was as if the room itself recognized the weight of the moment. Every broken wall, every piece of shattered metal seemed to wait as Ryan made his decision. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He could end the war with one act, following his orders exactly. Or he could act in a way no one expected, in a way that required courage of a different kind. The Queen lay there, unable to rise, and in that stillness, the choice became clear. Ryan set his rifle aside, letting it rest on the rubble. He stepped closer, his hands ready to act in a way that no drill, no mission, and no order had ever taught him. For the first time, he saw clearly that mercy could be a weapon more powerful than any rifle. That a single choice could change more than battles. That life, even the life of an enemy, held value beyond orders. The Queen's eyes widened slightly as he reached toward her. It was the first acknowledgement that perhaps she had not expected. No one had ever helped her before, not in her long reign of command and war. And yet here stood a human soldier, ready to do what no one else would dare. Ryan's heart pounded, but his mind was calm. He had chosen. The next step would define everything the soldier he was, the future of both humans and Scifi, and the fragile hope that even in war, mercy could create a new path. Ryan took a deep breath and stepped closer to the alien queen. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. The queen lay on the ground, her powerful frame weakened by injury and exhaustion. She was taller and heavier than any human he had ever lifted, yet he felt a strange determination. This was the moment where choice became action. He knelt carefully beside her, placing his hands under her arms. The armor she wore was solid, but with careful positioning, he could feel her body's weight settle across his arms. She made a faint sound, a breath of surprise that carried no anger. Her eyes widened slightly as if to acknowledge what he was doing. Ryan lifted slowly. The first movement was difficult, his legs straining under her weight. The chamber seemed to tilt slightly with the effort, and dust fell from the cracks in the ceiling. Yet he held firm. Each step he took felt like carrying more than her body. It was carrying the possibility of change, the hope that mercy could exist even in the heart of war. The queen's head rested lightly against his shoulder. She did not speak, yet Ryan could sense her awareness. Her eyes scanned him with careful intelligence. For all her power, she had never depended on anyone like this before. Now, in silence, they were connected by trust, fragile and unspoken. Outside the chamber, faint sounds of distant battle reminded Ryan that danger still existed. The walls trembled occasionally from distant explosions, and debris shifted slightly with the aftershocks. He had to move carefully, balancing the weight in his arms while navigating the ruined floor. Every step was deliberate, measured, as if a single misstep could end everything. Ryan's mind raced. He thought about the soldiers outside, his comrades who might see this act and not understand it. They had been trained to fight, to eliminate threats, to follow orders without hesitation. Yet he had chosen differently. The queen was not a threat in this moment. She was a being in need of help, and he had made the decision to act with courage beyond duty. As he moved, he felt the subtle weight shift of her body. Her limbs were weak, yet she did not resist. It was as if she understood the effort and accepted it. Her breathing remained steady but slow, a reminder of her fragile condition. Ryan's arms burned with exertion, but he did not falter. Every movement was precise, controlled, as he made his way toward the exit of the ruined chamber. The closer he got to the exit, the more he felt the tension of the moment. He could imagine the soldiers waiting, seeing him carry the alien queen and questioning his judgment. Some might see it as betrayal, others as madness. Yet in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was life, trust, and the courage to act when all eyes expected destruction. The queen's gaze remained on him. Her eyes, though large and alien, seemed to hold understanding. For the first time, Ryan realized that power was not only in command or strength. True power could be in the choice to protect, in the act of lifting another being when all else expected harm. This realization filled him with a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos of the ruined stronghold. Ryan adjusted his grip slightly as he stepped over broken rubble. His boots slipped a little, but he kept his balance. The queen's weight shifted again, this time slightly resting more against him. He felt her pulse, faint but steady, a reminder that life was fragile yet enduring. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, louder this time. Dust and small stones fell from the ceiling, and a faint crack appeared in the wall. Ryan's heart raced, but he did not stop. The queen was safe in his arms, and he would not let fear or danger make him falter. Each careful step toward the exit was a declaration of choice, a statement that mercy could exist even in a world shaped by war. Finally, he reached the doorway, the dim light from the outside spilling into the chamber. The exit was close, yet he knew the hardest part was not over. He had to carry her into a safe place, past soldiers and dangers, past uncertainty. Yet the act of lifting her had already changed something. In the quiet understanding between them, a bridge had formed between enemy and human, warrior and soldier. Ryan paused for a brief moment, looking down at her. She was still, breathing slowly, her eyes calm. No fear, no anger, only quiet awareness. He nodded slightly to himself, reaffirming the choice he had made. Then, with careful strength, he moved forward. Each step was heavy, deliberate, and filled with the weight of responsibility. In that ruined chamber, the human soldier carried the alien queen, not as a weapon, not as a captive, but as a being in need. The war outside could rage, the orders could demand obedience, yet in that moment, Ryan acted with courage that went beyond battle. He lifted her in his arms and walked into the unknown, shaping the future with a single act of mercy. Ryan stepped into the corridor outside the ruined chamber, carrying the alien queen carefully in his arms. The hallway was narrow, littered with debris from collapsed walls and shattered machinery. Dust hung in the air, making each breath heavy. Despite the chaos, Ryan's focus was sharp. Every step had to be measured, every movement precise, because one misstep could end in disaster. He heard distant sounds of battle, the hum of alien energy weapons and the thrum of human artillery. The stronghold was not yet fully quiet. There could be enemy forces still hiding, waiting for a chance to strike. Ryan tightened his grip on the queen. She was still heavy, but steady. Her breathing remained slow and even, and her eyes followed him, calm but aware. As he moved, he thought of the soldiers from his own unit. They would not expect to see him carrying the alien queen instead of standing ready to eliminate her. Some might see it as betrayal. Others might see madness. Yet Ryan knew he had chosen differently, and he would stand by that choice. At the next junction, he heard voices. Human soldiers appeared, their weapons raised in surprise. "Put her down," one shouted, his tone sharp with confusion and fear. "That's the enemy queen." Ryan raised his hand slightly, signaling them to pause. "She's not a threat right now," he said, his voice firm. "She is injured. I am taking her somewhere safe." The soldiers hesitated. They had been trained to follow orders and to eliminate the Scifi queen if she was found. Yet here was one of their own, carrying her with strength and determination. They saw the weight of the situation in Ryan's posture, the care in his movements, and they faltered. The queen shifted slightly in his arms, and Ryan felt the subtle tension of her muscles. She did not resist, but the weight reminded him of the danger. He could not afford to stumble. He moved carefully through the corridor, aware of every loose stone, every sharp edge. His boots crunched on broken metal and rubble, but he did not stop. The walls around him shook again from distant explosions. Dust fell from the ceiling, some of it landing on the queen's shoulders. She blinked at it, not with anger or fear, but with quiet acknowledgement. Ryan realized that despite all the battles she had led, she had never been helped like this before. Her survival had depended on her own strength, but now she relied on him entirely. They reached a larger chamber, one that had been partially destroyed by bombardment. Ryan moved along the edge carefully, keeping her away from falling debris. He noticed a few small fires burning from broken equipment, the smoke curling upward. The stronghold was unstable, but he pressed on, knowing that every second counted. Another group of human soldiers appeared ahead. They stopped in surprise at the sight before them, a young soldier carrying the alien queen in his arms. They shouted orders, telling him to put her down and secure her as a prisoner. Ryan did not answer immediately. He adjusted his hold, making sure the queen was steady. He looked at the soldiers with determination. "She is not a threat," he said again. "If we harm her now, we only continue the cycle of war. I will get her to safety." Some soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, unsure what to do. Others still hesitated, torn between following orders and seeing the truth of the moment. The queen's calm gaze met Ryan's, and in that look, he felt a silent promise. They were crossing a dangerous line, but it was one that could change everything. Ryan moved forward, carrying her past the hesitant soldiers. The corridor twisted and turned, filled with rubble and hazards. He stepped carefully, each motion deliberate. The queen's weight pressed against him, a constant reminder of the responsibility he had chosen. He could feel her pulse, faint but steady, and he focused on keeping her safe above all else. At last, they reached a stairwell that led upward to a medical shelter set up by the humans. Ryan began the climb slowly, feeling the strain in his arms and legs. The queen's body shifted slightly as they moved, but she did not resist. It was clear she trusted him, just as he trusted himself to do the right thing. The final stretch of the stairwell was narrow, but Ryan gritted his teeth and continued. Dust fell from above, and small pieces of debris threatened to trip him, but he pressed on. Every step brought them closer to safety, closer to a place where mercy could exist, where the queen could live without immediate threat. As they emerged into the shelter, the sounds of battle outside faded slightly. Ryan set her down carefully on a reinforced platform used for medical treatment. The queen's eyes remained on him, calm and thoughtful. He stepped back, breathing heavily, feeling the exhaustion of the lift but also the quiet satisfaction of choice. For the first time in the war, a human soldier had acted differently, choosing life over destruction. The moment was fragile, but it was real. Outside the shelter, the world continued to fight, but inside, a seed of understanding had been planted. Ryan stood there, looking down at the alien queen. He had risked his life, defied orders, and carried the most feared enemy across the battlefield. And yet, in that act, he had done something greater than any mission could demand. He had shown that strength was not only in weapons or power, but in the courage to act with compassion when it mattered most. The queen's eyes reflected faint surprise, as if she understood that this human soldier had done something no one else had ever done. She did not speak yet, but the quiet acknowledgement in her gaze was enough. For Ryan, it was a confirmation that the choice had been the right one. The shelter was safe for now, the first step in a journey that could change the future of both humans and Scifi. And Ryan knew that the next challenges would come, but for this moment, he had done what few could even imagine. He had carried an enemy in his arms and chosen mercy, and that act alone could begin a new story. The medical shelter was quiet, lit by soft lights and the low hum of machines. Ryan set the alien queen gently on a reinforced platform used for injured soldiers. She lay still, her body heavy but her eyes alert. The tension from the escape lingered in his muscles, but he did not relax fully. Outside, the war continued, and danger could return at any moment. For a long moment, neither spoke. The queen's gaze followed him steadily, curious and calm. She did not struggle or demand attention. Her eyes reflected something Ryan had never expected: intelligence tempered by patience, and a quiet awareness that went beyond fear or anger. She was watching him as carefully as he had watched her. Ryan took a deep breath, his hands resting at his sides. he realized that the act of carrying her into safety had changed more than just the immediate moment. It had shifted the way he saw the war, the enemy, and perhaps even himself. For years, humans had viewed the Scifi as monsters, and he had believed it too. But now, standing here, he understood that they were not merely enemies, they were living beings with fear, pride, and thought. The queen shifted slightly, her eyes never leaving his. Then, in a low, resonant tone, her voice reached him, not spoken aloud, but as a vibration in the air that humans could feel and understand. Ryan flinched slightly, surprised by the clarity of the communication. She spoke slowly, carefully, and he felt the meaning in every pulse. "I am injured," she said, each word clear despite her condition. "I have led my people through battle, but now I am weak. You have chosen mercy when destruction was expected." "Why?" Ryan thought for a moment before answering. "Because killing you now does not make the war end. It only continues it. I have seen enough suffering. I cannot add more when I have a choice to act differently." The queen's eyes widened slightly. She had expected humans to act with violence, as her species had expected their enemies to act for centuries. Yet here was a soldier, defying orders, choosing life over death. She studied him carefully, her gaze filled with curiosity and a faint flicker of respect. "You are different from the others," she said. "Your people, they often fight without mercy. But you have chosen otherwise. You carry a burden not of your making, yet you hold it willingly. That is unusual." Ryan nodded slightly. "War is not always about following orders. Sometimes it is about choosing what is right, even when it is hard. I cannot undo the past, but I can decide what happens next." The queen's breathing was slow but steady. She observed him quietly, as if trying to understand more than his words could explain. Then she spoke again, sharing memories of her people and their struggles. She described how the Scifi had fought humans for years, not out of desire for conquest, but from fear and misunderstanding. They expected no mercy because they had received none. Every encounter had been shaped by fear, and violence had become the only language they knew. Ryan listened carefully, his mind opening to the perspective of the enemy he had been trained to hate. He realized that the queen's strength had been built not only on power, but on survival, strategy, and the constant need to protect her people. He saw that her people had also suffered, trapped in cycles of fear and retaliation, much like humans had suffered in the villages he had passed through. "You see now," the queen said, her voice steady, "that our war has been fueled by fear on both sides. You have acted in a way that no one expected. That act, your choice, changes more than this moment. It could change the future." Ryan felt a weight lift slightly from his shoulders. For years, he had fought, followed orders, and carried the burden of war. Yet in this quiet chamber, holding nothing but care and respect for a fallen enemy, he realized that courage was not only in combat. True courage could be in mercy, in understanding, and in creating hope where others saw only despair. The queen's eyes softened slightly. "You have shown that humans are capable of more than destruction. That strength can be in life as well as in battle. Your actions may teach our people something new. Perhaps, something lasting." Ryan looked at her, realizing the magnitude of their shared moment. For centuries, humans and Scifi had clashed in endless cycles. And yet, in this fragile space, they had begun something different, a connection built on trust, courage, and the decision to act with honor even when fear was present. Outside, the sounds of war continued, but inside the shelter, a new understanding had begun to form. The alien queen and the human soldier, once enemies, were now linked by a choice that transcended orders, weapons, and old hatred. In this moment, the possibility of peace glimmered faintly, fragile yet real, carried on the quiet acknowledgement of respect between two beings. Ryan knew that challenges would come, that not everyone would understand his actions, and that danger was still present. But he also knew that for the first time, there was hope that humans and Scifi could find a way to understand each other. And in the quiet shelter, the bond formed in that moment would grow stronger, laying the foundation for a future neither had thought possible. The sun rose slowly over the battlefield, casting a soft light through the broken walls of the stronghold. Outside, the sounds of war continued, but inside the medical shelter, a fragile calm had settled. Ryan stood near the platform where the alien queen rested. She had regained some strength, her breathing steadier, and her eyes held a quiet understanding. For the first time, she was no longer just the enemy leader, she was a being who had experienced mercy, trust, and courage from the humans she had once opposed. Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the ruined chamber where he first saw her, the weight of her body in his arms, and the danger of the escape through collapsing corridors. Every moment had tested him, not only as a soldier, but as a human being. He had chosen to act with compassion instead of fear, and that choice had shaped the path for something larger than himself. The Queen's voice filled the room, steady and clear. I see now that humans are capable of strength beyond war. You have carried me, protected me, and made a choice that no one expected. This act will be remembered, not as weakness, but as courage. Ryan nodded quietly. I did what I thought was right. The war has taken too much. If one act can change the future, then it is worth it. She studied him carefully, her eyes thoughtful. You have shown my people that mercy can exist even in the heart of conflict. You have proven that strength is not only in power or fear, but in choice and honor. Perhaps the cycle of war can end, because of this moment. Word spread quickly among both humans and Scifi soldiers. Many were shocked to hear of the human soldier who had carried their queen instead of harming her. Some questioned his actions, unsure if mercy was the right path. Others felt hope stir within them, inspired by the courage it took to act differently. Across both sides, the story became a symbol of something greater than battles or orders. The queen slowly rose to her feet with Ryan's support. She was still fragile, but her posture carried the dignity of her rank. She looked at him and nodded in quiet respect. For the first time, there was no fear between them. They were no longer enemies in that moment, but witnesses to a choice that could change the course of history. Meetings began between human and Scifi leaders, guided by the fragile trust born from Ryan's act. The queen spoke openly of her people's fears and misunderstandings, and humans listened. Soldiers who had fought relentlessly on both sides now saw the possibility of communication instead of destruction. Negotiations, once unimaginable, began to take shape. Small steps were taken to rebuild trust, fueled by the knowledge that even the most feared leader could be treated with mercy. Ryan watched from a distance as discussions took place. He did not seek recognition or praise. The act of carrying the queen had been enough. Yet he felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that courage had a ripple effect. One soldier's choice had reminded both humans and Scifi that mercy and understanding could exist alongside strength and determination. The queen approached him later, her voice gentle but firm. You have changed more than one life today. You have changed the future for both our peoples. Your courage will be remembered. You have shown that humanity is capable of greatness beyond combat. Ryan looked at her and smiled slightly. We can only do what we think is right. I hope our peoples can remember that, even when the war seems endless. Over time, the war began to wind down. Skirmishes decreased, and peace talks continued. Leaders on both sides cited the story of the human soldier who had carried the alien queen as a turning point. It became a lesson for soldiers and civilians alike: strength is not only in weapons or fear, but also in mercy, courage, and the willingness to make the right choice when it matters most. The Queen and Ryan remained in contact as peace took shape. She shared wisdom about her people, and he shared lessons from humanity. They learned from each other, building bridges that once seemed impossible. Slowly, walls that had existed for centuries between the two species began to crumble, replaced by dialogue, understanding, and trust. Years later, historians would mark the day Ryan carried the Queen as a moment that began a new chapter for humans and Scifi. The story was not just about war or victory, it was about courage, mercy, and the power of one choice to reshape the destiny of many. Ryan often thought back to that ruined chamber, the weight of her body in his arms, and the silence that had stretched between them. In that quiet, a bond had formed that neither war nor fear could erase. The war had taken lives, but it had also revealed the capacity for humanity to rise above hatred and choose a path of hope. The alien queen, once the symbol of fear, now stood as a symbol of understanding. And Ryan, a young human soldier, became a reminder that heroism is not only in battles won, but in acts of compassion that change the world. The sun rose higher in the sky, shining over the battlefield that was no longer silent with destruction, but alive with the promise of peace. A new dawn had come, not because of victory alone, but because a human had lifted an enemy in his arms and chosen mercy.